A man was tied to a bed by two young women. One of them removed her underwear and tossed it onto his face. Then she raised her foot and rubbed it against his face without restraint. His pleas for mercy were met with a slap from the woman. The previous evening, someone knocked on Jack's door. When he opened it, he found two attractive women standing there. Being somewhat of a womanizer, Jack noticed they were shivering from the cold and quickly invited them inside. He brought them towels, and the women asked if they could dry their clothes. After a moment of feigned hesitation and their playful coaxing, Jack decisively offered them bathrobes and thoughtfully prepared 2 cups of hot milk tea for them. He then put their clothes in the dryer. When Jack returned to the living room, he found the women happily playing with his pet dog. He used this as an opportunity to start a conversation, and they all got along remarkably well. Soon, the car that was supposed to pick up the women arrived. Jack retrieved their clothes from the dryer, but when he returned to the living room, the women were nowhere to be found. Suddenly, he heard laughter coming from the bathroom. Jack knocked on the door, urging the women to come out. When there was no response, he entered with his eyes covered, only to discover them bathing. They enthusiastically invited him to join them. Faced with their aggressive advances, Jack's excitement began to get the better of him. Flanked by the women, he pushed one away only to have the other immediately pounce on him. Seeing that Jack wouldn't give in, the women crouched down and began tying his shoelaces together. This night was destined to be extraordinary. Early the next morning, Jack woke up to find no one beside him. Thinking the women had left, he suddenly heard commotion from the living room. Not only had they stayed, but they had also made a complete mess of his kitchen. Just as Jack was about to scold them, his wife called. Fearing she would hear other women's voices, he stepped outside to take the call. Meanwhile, the women deliberately tried to seduce him from the window. After hanging up, Jack stormed back inside and told the women to get dressed and leave. However, he turned to see them scribbling on his wife's artwork. Jack's anger reached its boiling point. He pinned one of the women against the wall and dialed the police. Seeing his genuine anger, she hung up the phone and begged Jack to drive them home. After dropping them off, Jack cleaned up the garbage in his house and threw away everything the women had used. Suddenly, he heard a strange noise from the living room. Going to investigate, he found that his family portrait had been shattered. As he stood there bewildered, someone knocked him unconscious from behind. The women had returned. When Jack regained consciousness, he was tied to the bed. The women entered the bedroom wearing bizarre makeup and began to humiliate him while one of them recorded the entire process. Jack seized an opportunity to break free from the ropes and slapped one woman to the ground. He then lunged aggressively toward the other woman, but she remained unfazed. She stabbed a fork into Jack's shoulder. As the fork twisted inside his body, he lost consciousness again. Due to copyright restrictions, this is all we can show you of this film, titled Knock Knock.